Romance just flows through my veins. Like, I've always been a hopeful romantic. Music is the soundtrack to our lives. Man, it's like meat falling off the bone because you've prepped it all day. It is tough to get up every day and know that the world is against you.
And we're back with BET Talks. I'm your host, Miabelle, and today's guest is a true architect of R&B. We met him as 1/4 of the legendary group we all know as 112, bringing us timeless records and smooth harmonies. And of course, his story continues to evolve as a solo artist, songwriter, producer, and a businessman. And we're absolutely loving his latest album, The Evolution of Romance, Volume 1. Please help me welcome Q Parker. Hello.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm well, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. You came in singing, and we're so happy to be with you today.
Help it. Everywhere I go, it goes with me.
I know, and you still sound great.
Thank you.
Of course. Now, we're gonna start this off with a game. It's called This or That. All you do is choose and tell us why.
Okay.
Only You or Peaches and Cream?
Only You for sure. Because Only You is the record that introduced 112 to the world. And B.I.G.
Of course, come on. That's a big one.
Times Square, the whole visual. We're 17 years old, so that's always a special record.
Now, what about writing from heartbreak or writing from happiness?
Oh, some of the best love songs are heartbreak songs. And so I would say I would choose Heartbreak. When I go back to one of our more popular records, Cupid is not a love song. It's really a conversation that wasn't the best of conversations. And so I would definitely say writing from heartbreak.
Of course. Now, 90s romance or 2026 romance?
90s romance. Well, I'll say 90s romance, but this version of Q Parker as the romance dealer is delivering 2026 romance.
Okay, y'all heard it here. All right, the dealer. Now, take us back to your days with 112 and, you know, just the sounds that we were getting in comparison to the new generation of R&B that we're listening to now.
In our teenage years, we were just so green and we just loved the idea of being able to use our creativity and then the world receive it in such a massive way. And so every day we showed up just excited to have an opportunity to do what it was that we love to do and not even taking for granted that in that era, it was not only so many artists trying to get record deals, but it was so many groups trying to get record deals.
Yeah.
And so you think about if we were rehearsing in Mike's grandmother's basement, somebody next door was probably rehearsing in their grandmother's basement. And the fact that we got a record deal, the potential millions of people that were trying to get a record deal at the time, it just shows a lot about our work ethic and then just really grateful that Puffy saw something in us to give us the opportunity. And here we are 30 years later.
Still doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what do you think specifically that it was about 112 that really stepped out in the golden era of R&B?
I know that it was our fusion of hip hop and R&B. We were first signed by Bad Boy. We just were some balladeers. All we wanted to do was Duran on the keyboard and the three of us around him singing in a room for some girls. But
Begging too, huh?
yeah, all of that, all of that. Being signed to Bad Boy and Puffy's hip hop influence, it gave us another component of 112 and male R&B groups that weren't even present at the time.
Right.
And so even though there was a lot of traffic, what I think made 112 stand out was the signature voice of Slim, but then also the fact that we could do hip hop and R&B. And so when you tell the story of hip hop and R&B, you have to mention 112 because I believe we did it better than anybody.
Absolutely. I agree with that for sure. Do you have any special favorites from that era, from the group?
I think one of the greatest examples of blending hip hop and R&B was our song, It's Over Now. Duran Jones just kind of channeled the White Lines rumble, which was notable for a lot of hip hop songs. And then when you add our gospel-like harmonies and our interchanging lead vocalists throughout the song, I think that was one of the perfect examples of blending hip hop, gospel, R&B, jazz, all
of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then to see you guys at the 2015 BET Awards on that stage again as a Bad Boy collective. You know, it reminded us of everything that you guys put out in the 90s and just how much that it still remains true to this day. What was that experience like for you? Did you realize in that moment how important your era was to the culture?
I think for a while I have been realizing that it's just something special about the 90s. If I could choose any other era, I probably would stay where I am. I say often to a lot of my peers, it's just great to have been a part of the 90s era because it's an era that'll never die. And if you look at a lot of the touring artists right now, a lot of them are from the 90s because the 90s music made you feel a way.
Yep.
Not to mention that the songs were just great songs, but it was just a feeling about the 90s era. So right now, if you go anywhere and play a 90s record, you immediately get that nostalgia. And so I'm just really proud that I'm the age that I am. We were discovered in the era that we were discovered, and we were able to put out music and contribute to the legacy of that 90s era.
Of course. Now, how would you say you evolved personally since then?
Yeah, everything that one would see as Q Parker presented today is me bringing along with me all of the 90s era, all of the lessons that I learned being a member of 112, being signed to Bad Boy, being signed to Def Jam, being signed to E1, and then being an independent artist.
Right.
So I bring all of that knowledge, all of that experience, all of that trial and error. That's the version of Q Parker that you see now as the solo artist.
Now, when it comes to the evolution of Romance, Volume 1, where did this start? Where did this creation of yours begin? Why do you feel like we needed it?
As a musician, I'm gifted enough that I can go in the studio and just create a song. I can do that. But I like to have a purpose as to when and why and how I record. Having a conversation with my production team, we were just trying to figure out what's a lane that Q Parker can occupy in today's version of R&B, and not just throwing songs out just because we can musically make something sound good.
Right.
And we dialed in that we felt like romance was missing in today's delivery of R&B music. And we just tapped into that. I coined myself the romance dealer, somebody that will commit to singing songs about romance, delivering romance, and being consistent with not trying to be a part of the trends, but really just be a solid deliverer of this type of music. So when people want to have a romantic evening or when they want to say something to their significant other that they may not have the words, you can count on Q Parker to be able to give you those songs.
Now, besides the fact that you come from the era where romance was alive and well, what are some things that live in you that give you that energy to give us that again in 2026? Because romance is dead out here in these streets, I can tell you now.
I believe that, well, first and foremost, I grew up in a mother-father household.
Come on.
So I saw my parents love on each other every day. And then as the youngest of 4 children, my older siblings, they just loved on me in a major way. So I don't say that I was spoiled, but I was just loved on. But also being the youngest, I saw my sisters when they would have the ebb and flows of their relationships. I would see when their boyfriends disappointed them. I would see when their boyfriends got some brownie points. I would see all of those moments. And then I fell in love with watching the soap operas.
Okay.
And when you watch the soap operas, it's all about passion and love and intimacy and soft and gentleness. And then I become a member of 112.
Right.
And so now we're writing all of these love songs. And so when I fast forward to 2024, when I released this project, I knew that this is just who I am. Romance just flows through my veins. Like, I've always been a hopeful romantic, even in my early dating years. I've been married 24 years now. And so
yes, we love that.
Everything, thank you. Everything about me, I am just a representative of romance.
Yeah, and love.
And love, yes.
Yes. So why do you think men struggle these days, even artists right now, struggle these days with R&B making these love records? What do you think is missing in the water?
That's the $1 million question, because when you look at the legacy of male R&B artists, that was in bold print.
Right.
It was in bold print that you must be romantic. You're making music predominantly for the ladies.
Right, and vulnerable too.
Vulnerable, smooth, sexy, cool, suave.
Right.
All of those things is what was in red, highlighted in bold, in 92 font size. right? And I just don't know, along the years, we just got away from that. And it could be a cultural shift. It could be an upbringing shift. It could be the media shift, what's available now to our world and our culture. I just believe when you hone in on what's valuable, romance is something that I know that we cannot live without.
Right.
We weren't designed to be alone. We all strive and yearn for companionship. And we know that music is the soundtrack to our lives. And so I want to be a contributor to love and life and all of these things. And so romance is something that Q Parker will always be attached to.
He's the dealer of it.
Yeah.
Now, how do you deal with romancing your 24-year marriage? How do you keep up with it and make sure that you're still being the same person that you are in the music?
There's Q Parker, the artist, but then there's Quintus, the father, the husband, knowing that when it's time for me to put on the uniform, I go do my job, and I do my job well. But I also have to make sure that I'm prioritizing not just my career, but also my marriage, my family, my position in the community. And so I've just learned how to prioritize those things and make sure that nothing is void of my time, my energy, and my effort. And it has boded well. Charlene and I will be celebrating 24 years in August.
Yes, we love that. Congratulations. Now, with the making of this album creatively, what was the process like for you?
The process was really simple, actually. There was a 12-year break from the 2012 release of The Manual, which was my first solo album, until now, Evolution of Romance, Volume 1 that came out in 25. And where I normally would spend 2-3 months recording 20-30 songs, this process was a lot more streamlined because I knew exactly what I wanted it to sound like, who I wanted the players to be. And of the 9 songs that we recorded, those are the 9 songs that made Evolution of Romance Volume 1. And it took me about maybe 3 weeks of every day in the studio because it's just something about when you lock in the ideas, the musicianship, the creativity, it all just kind of flows. I'm really proud of Volume 1.
Yeah, and that's why I called you an architect of R&B too, because you're really taking us back to like the composition of how the music is made. We also get to hear from Rico Love, which we haven't from a while. So what about, you know, the producers that you had on the project and just the all-around collaborative effort with the people involved?
I am a huge advocate of teamwork and collaborations. We're all gifted enough to be able to do things on our own, but it's just amazing when you get in the room of creatives and allow the room to just flow. I have an amazing team at home in Atlanta, from Black Elvis and Al Jamal, Ellie, who's an amazing songwriter, Tario, J. Bush, Ant, but then also my friend for years, Rico Love. He's produced and written some of the most memorable songs of the 2000s, and to be able to go to Miami and session with him and lab with him was a dream come true because I've always been a huge fan of his and watched him create all these amazing songs, even Felly too, for all these other artists. And I was going to make sure that I seized the moment when I had an opportunity to get in the room with such incredible creatives, and I'm really proud of what we was able to come up with.
Yeah, do you have a favorite on the project? Mine is Keep On Lovin'. Started off real strong.
Yeah. I can't say that I have a favorite. I was just very intentional about what I wanted the message of romance to be. I'm so committed to this message of romance that I'm turning it into a volume series. And so I was very intentional about naming the first album Volume 1. I'm currently now recording Volume 2, slated to be released this summer.
Yes.
And then I'll have Volumes 3, 4, and 5. And so I'm going to take you on this romance journey because I believe that there are levels of romance. Romance isn't just one thing. You can go deeper and deeper and deeper. And so that's the goal of releasing this Evolution of Romance volume series 1 through 5.
So what is the first level of romance from your eyes, your perspective?
Yeah, the first level of romance is understanding that romance is a real thing and defining it in a way that rids the stereotypes. A lot of us who didn't have the birds and the bees conversation with our fathers or older brothers just kind of had to figure figure out what relations even look like from what you heard in the streets, watching videos or whatever. And
Same with women.
It's a lot of misinformation when you get it that way versus connecting with a person, being very communicative with a person, allowing intimacy to really allow me to actually see you and not just jump into the physical, which is where I think the misinformation is. And so the first thing is identifying that romance is a thing, and then now let's define what romance is. And romance looks a lot of different ways. There's some mental parts of romance. Romance look like support. Romance look like being gentle, being soft, being vulnerable, listening, caring, thoughtfulness. It's the deeds that one do throughout the day. So when you actually get to the point where you want to do something physical, man, it's like meat falling off the bone because you've prepped it all day. And I'm a constant. Like that to me is what romance is.
Of course, and I'm sure it helps hold the relationship together too.
Absolutely. It's men and women. Romance is not gender based.
Okay.
Right? I say in the first single was called Beg. It was redefining and making Beg into an acronym, which stands for bringing endless gratitude to your partner.
Yes.
And so the song was like, this ain't your typical begging. It's not begging because you messed up or in the doghouse or any of that. This form of begging is deeds that's going to keep us in a great space. And if I'm begging for her, she's begging for me on a consistent basis, then the relationship has a very, very good chance of being successful.
Absolutely. That was a record that we were running on WBLS here in New York City. What stands out is like what you said, women also have to fall in line with the romance too.
Men too.
But his version of begging, okay?
Yes, the deeds version.
Yeah.
Bringing endless gratitude to your partner.
Now, what are some ways that your wife brings endless gratitude to you so that, women can take some notes on how to show up for their man in other ways?
So I'm big on words of affirmation. As a man, I think that no one understands the journey and the plight of a man like a man.
Right.
To be able to get those words of affirmation from my wife is really, really helpful because it is tough to get up every day and know that the world is against you.
Right.
And you're having to carry so much weight. And so I think words of affirmation, acknowledgement, support, and just a genuine care to do the things that may not necessarily be the normal things. And I always say to my wife, we live in a reciprocal relationship. Things that you want from me, I want the same things. And so if you want that random text at lunchtime, send me one too.
Right.
If I hear the garage door coming up and you got groceries, I'm gonna meet you at the garage to help you. But when I'm coming home with groceries and you hear the garage coming up, I want to see you meet me at the garage too. Like, I just believe that it's a verb, it's a dual action. And so those are some of the things that through conversations and me understanding that psychologically we all change every 5 to 7 years. So if I'm stuck on when I was 25, the things that you loved at 25, you may despise them joints when you become 32.
Right.
But I gotta have my eyes and my ears and my surveillance open so that I can pick up on when things change. And so as long as we stay in tune with each other, as long as we stay connected with each other and are very communicative with each other on what we need and want and desire from each other, I think that has been one of the reasons why we've been able to last, withstand, rebirth in some instances, reconcile in some ways, grow, stretch, expand in our 24 years.
Of course. Did you have to hit a certain point or did something happen for that switch of Romance Volume 1 to really take place in your actual life? Because all the things that you mentioned about what Volume 1 means when it comes to romance, if you're not taught that, which I'm sure you did get a glimpse of, but you got to experience it too.
The great songwriter Mickey Howard, an artist, said experience is the best teacher. I got the record deal as a teenager.
Yes.
So my early 20s were just the fast life on the road. And I didn't do a great job of balancing being the artist at that time, but then also being a young husband and really understanding what the values of a spouse and a husband and a leader and a provider was. And so I can stand here firmly and say that we are in a happy 24 years. A lot of those 24 years weren't necessarily the best. However, I always give my wife, Charlinda Parker, kudos and love because she gave me grace and she was patient with me enough to allow me to grow and mature into the man, the husband, the father, the leader that I am today. And so, life taught me some really, really strong lessons, but also helped me identify the man that I need to be in all phases of being the head of my tribe.
Yeah, and we can learn a lot from that volume 1 alone. Now, in a world where everybody's chasing attention, do you think that people still want love?
I would say yes, because I don't believe that we were created and designed to be alone. Companionship is something that we yearn for.
Right.
And if you're in a relationship, you can't have a relationship without romance. It's just not going to work. And I know many people that probably have tried it, and if they ever go and sit in front of a therapist or a counselor or somebody professional and licensed, they'll get out that the romance is missing. The romance is almost like the heartbeat of the relationship's body. If the romance is in a healthy space, the relationship is in a healthy space. And so although people may not have matured enough yet to even identify that that's something that they want and they need, I'm just gonna make it available for when the light does spark, that this is a place where they can go and get some guidance, some leadership, and some assistance in that romance department.
Yes, in the best of ways, because the vocals are vocaling. Okay? Thank you so much for being here. The Evolution of Romance Volume 1 must be listened to, all right? Please do it first before Volume 2 comes out. It's BET Talks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.